What's going on, family? It's your brother Lawrence here with another episode of Watch God Work. Now, you know, we come together in every episode just to talk to exceptional brothers and sisters in every arena of business, civic leadership, and culture who are sharing their God stories and about how God guides them, how God guides their work, how God guides their life. And so, God, with this time and with this thing that we're doing this morning, I'm just excited about today. You know, we don't do it too formally, right? So that's why I'm not cutting what I just did right now. But I'm so thankful to have an amazing sister, amazing sister that I'm gonna give some context to. But my sister Ashley, what's going on with this?
Hey Lawrence, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm grateful. I'm grateful. We like to always say, let's get into it, but we shall. But I want to give some context. Now, I've known Ashley, full disclosure, I've known Ashley for some years, and we also have we call it the One Flesh. We have the One Flesh team, so we're gonna have to do this again. We're gonna have to do this again with
Yes.
my brother, with her One Flesh, Terry Williams, and so this is his better half. But his better full, my sister Ashley, and so everything that we talked about, he gave love, but he showed love. But everything we talked about that was made possible in his life later, she had a hand in this thing later. So, but I want to jump in because Ashley, what I love about your story is that you've done a lot in a short amount of time. I think there's the obvious congratulations. You are expecting a young little one. Um,
Yes.
but also, you are an entrepreneur, and I call it quintessential entrepreneur, who's come from the context of kind of corporate, traditional investment banking, jumped in, started a family, figured out some stuff, failed at some stuff, was in the valley for
Yes.
a little bit, and then you go on a journey with your husband, and put together a business, many different businesses that have served people. But I think there's so much more to your story, and I want to give people the genesis because you're from Texas, you're from outside
Yes.
Houston. So, who's Ashley Williams?
Ooh. Who is Ashley Williams? I would have to start by saying I'm a child of God, right?
Mm.
And I have to start there because it feeds into everything else. So my faith really centers me. I am a wife and a mom of two little boys, Terry and Trenton, have a baby girl on the way. Uh, I am very closely connected with my family. That's a huge part of who I am,
Mm.
and my community as well. My husband and I, we serve at our church and in our community. Um, and I'm an entrepreneur. I have multiple businesses. One is the League, a warehouse gym here in Houston that Terry and I have run for 7 years now. We're so grateful to be able to steward what God has given us through that beautiful community. And then in November of 2019, I launched Bird Williams, which is my strategy firm for small businesses. And that is just a joy of my heart because when we launched the League, we made so many mistakes that cost so much time and money and
Mm.
energy. So just to be able to tell entrepreneurs, don't do this, look out for this, try this, consider that is huge for me. And so it's been such a blessing over the last year to be able to steward that as well.
Mm. We're gonna get so much into the mistakes, the things you do, because what I also love about hearing about how you approach and think about business is there's a beautiful discipline that you kind of take to it around setting the foundation, and I think that's what we're going to talk about here because later you talk about the importance of the business plan, not so much to check the box, but we'll get into that. But your foundation, because I think sometimes when people hear that, God has always been a part of my life, I'm a child of God, on some sense, there's many people who relate and get that, but there are many people who don't, especially when they feel like they came up in a culture where church and God was around, but they never really understood why you chose it. So for you, when was the genesis? Like, when was the founder? When was it like, okay, this is just not what I do. Like, this is good news. I need this in my life. Like, when did that happen? And then why was God even like, okay, I really need this. I need him.
Yes. It was for me in junior high. So
Mm,
I grew up in church. I actually went to a Christian school.
mm,
So it was very small. I graduated with 18 people in my senior class. So I have a very unique experience in that way.
mm,
And when you're young, you go to church. My parents, we went to a Baptist church initially, so it was kind of this weird dichotomy of my school having this non-denominational church that was different from the Black Baptist church that we'd go to on Sundays. But there
mm,
came a point in junior high. It was actually when my youth pastor passed away.
mm,
Suddenly, she was on a flight, and the plane crashed. And that journey for me was the first time that someone close to me had died. We were very close.
mm,
And I think that's when I went from just kind of going through the motions to like really needing to know God for myself. Why
mm.
am I serving this God? Do I really feel connected to this God? And that's when it went from like the religion to actually having a relationship with God. And I mean, I look back at notes and journal entries from myself in junior high, and I'm like, wow, I really see where that transition happened. And I really see how it guided so many of the decisions I made. To date or not to date, and who to date, what college looked like for me, and on and on. I had like this deep rooted conviction because of that moment, I think, in junior high. So I think that's when it really became real to me.
Mm. For you, even in that becoming real, what was it about? Was it the fact that you could speak to someone about something that you didn't understand? Was it the fact that you felt like there was some sense of clarity? That's where a policeman made sense. Like, what was it specifically about God as a junior high school person who's dealing with death, but also who's still trying to figure out life for themselves?
Hmm. I think it was really just kind of pouring myself into it, right? Reading scripture differently, leaning into worship, right?
Mm,
That it became clear to me. There wasn't, I don't think, anyone that I can think of that did that for me. It was my own choice. And
mm,
as a child, I was very I was very proactive. I was a self-starter, right? So
mm.
I didn't need other people to tell me or to guide me or to lead me to do something. I mean, my parents say that all the time. You would just start doing stuff, right? And I think I just kind of took it by the reins, and I was like, I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna dive into this and learn about God for myself.
Mm. What I like this even idea about notes, because especially that's a very traumatic thing to go through, and I think people could relate to having some sort of moment or experience or experiences that kind of shook up their world, and they either responded in one way. But I think even carrying this view of notes, you find yourself graduated with 18, have this kind of renewed sense and just clarity around God and His place in your life. Then you find yourself in big old Texas, University of Texas, right?
Yes.
Where you meet your husband, but then you also then go on from big old Texas to big old New York. And so, can you talk a little bit about that experience, like what you learned that, like in that time, about like just what stoked the entrepreneurial flame? Because I have a view of your story there, but could you kind of describe to people like what the New York experience was, going from one big place to this new place, and then you're doing in banking? Just walk us through that a bit.
Sure. So just like when I went from Texas City, Texas to Austin, Texas, in a class of 18 people to, tens of thousands of students, class sizes were just blowing my mind. It was definitely a culture shock moment for me. I was no longer the smartest kid in the room. I graduated valedictorian in high school, and there were like tons of valedictorians, in
Life flex,
the
life flex,
freshman
life
class at
flex.
Macomb. Right. No,
I'm
I'm just
playing. I'm
saying it
messing
was
with
like
you. I'm messing with you. I'm messing with you.
they were in the freshman orientation. They were like, there are 42 valedictorians in our freshman class at Macombs, and I was like, wow, yeah, I'm not special anymore. So that was a whole process. Then again, going from Austin to New York City, I had never been. I didn't even think I'd get this job offer in investment banking. I had no investment banking experience or internship, and it just landed. And I get there, have no clue what I'm doing. I knew two people, you and my mentor, who had actually put the reference in for me at Barclays Capital to get the job, and it was a whole new world, right? I struggled just like I did in Austin initially. I struggled in those first years, kind of trying to get acclimated, right? Everyone in my analyst program went to Ivy League schools. I was like the only one from UT and from the South, and just learning all the things in investment banking, right? There's already a steep learning curve, and then I was thrown as the only analyst into a group, which is not normal. Typically, there's multiple analysts in a group, so it was an even steeper learning curve for someone who didn't have that experience. But by the grace of God, I just kept putting one foot in front of the other. And, I try to live in excellence. So in everything I did, I was excellent, using the resources that I have in my hands as best I could. And eventually did very well in that group and was the only analyst in the US on a $4 billion IPO. It was a global transaction. It was a landmark transaction for our firm. Huge deal. They had this ceremony and everyone's congratulating me about how great it was. And I'm thinking, this is not it. This can't be it. This can't be what I'm working toward. This doesn't give me the fulfillment or excitement that other people in this room seem to have. I mean, my hair was falling out. I was having random white spots appear on my stomach. Investment banking is very rigorous and I wasn't taking care of myself. And I ultimately wasn't fulfilled, but I had no idea what I was going to do next. And I had never thought of being an entrepreneur. I always wanted to be in the business world, but what I did was basically write a list of things that I would do if no one paid me, or things that I would do if money wasn't an issue at all. What struggle or sacrifice am I really willing to tolerate? What do people come to me all the time for help with that I enjoy doing? What work do I get lost in, right? And I put this list of things. It was really random. Everything from like volleyball to dancing to planning and logistics and helping people. It was really random. Pasted it on my computer desk in the big open space that everyone could see. I was done.
The boldness, the audacity.
It was like, look, this is what we're doing. And one day it clicked to me, I want to run a business, but I didn't have a business. I didn't have a thing like a hair salon or a restaurant. And my boyfriend, well, Terry and I, we dated in college for 3.5 years. He was my very first boyfriend, but he broke up with me when I moved to New York. And he broke up with me because we, in the 3.5 years we dated, had only lived in the same city for 4 months of that time. So we had a long distance relationship and it was really not great, but I didn't know that because he was my first boyfriend. So I'm like, it's fine. I had been in Italy for 6 months studying abroad. I'd gone to Ghana and West Africa for a summer to do a social development project. And I was like going again. I even told him after New York, I might go to Hong Kong or London or, he's like, no. He's like, so are you ever going to come back to Houston? And he wanted to really, ground himself somewhere, which I wasn't in that place at the time. So he broke up with me. It was devastating. And we were apart for about 1.5 years. But at this time, as I'm having this enlightenment and awakening around not being fulfilled in what I'm doing, I decided, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur. My mom wanted to have a tea room. I was going to move back to Houston. I had accepted the 3rd-year offer with Barclays, but I told them I wasn't going to move forward with it and moved back to Houston for this tea room my mom wanted to start. And that process, Terry and I got back together. The tea room didn't work out. I low-key think it was my mom's agenda to just get me back to Houston.
the parental agenda.
Yes. And Terry was crushing it in the fitness world here in Houston. I mean, the top trainer at multiple studios. And I would see him running all around the town, killing himself trying to get to all his clients. And I said, you should have a gym where people can come to you. He's like, yeah, sure. Like in 10 years or so. I was like, no, we should do it now because I don't have a job. And I was supposed to do this tea room with my mom and that didn't work out. And so we built a business plan, a business model, and a year later launched the league.
There's so much in that, and we're going to surgery this situation because there's so much boldness it takes, especially when you're at the bank, and then you get to a place where, especially for many people, I was investment banking, at the FIG group, dying, right?
Yes.
But you get that offer, and a lot of the things that people struggle with is like you feel like you can't afford to ask these questions, right? And so I'm curious about just that sense of assurance to be at a place where, okay, I'm making 6 figures as a 22-year-old. I am struggling out here a little bit, but like I can't afford to do this because typically the story is, well, I have loans or I got family to take care of. I just need to pay my dues. So to be able to be in a position where you feel like, you know what, I'm going to ask these questions. Like, what was it? How did God kind of give you a sense of assurance? Like, what gave you that sense of courage just to ask those questions and feel like you had the quote unquote luxury that some people would say? How do you have the luxury to ask that? We don't ask those questions in our career.
Mm. That's a great question. And I can't remember the scripture. I believe it's in Proverbs, but it's about our confidence being in God.
Mm,
So it goes back to what I started with when you asked me who I am. And I said, I'm a child of God. It's like everything kind of stems from that for me.
mm,
And I'm not perfect in it. I have to remind myself of it at times. But where I was is like, yes, I might have debt or obligations, or like you said, I'm making six figures in my favorite city in the world. And at 22, why would I give that up?
mm,
But it was a knowing in my knower, that my youth pastor used to say that, where, I knew this was not what I was supposed to be doing. I knew there was a season. And I think one thing that maybe is huge for me that has really helped me in so many ways in life is understanding that there are seasons to life.
mm.
We get into a season and we think this is it. We get a friendship or a relationship and we think this is it. And it might have just been there for a season. It might have, the purpose might be done. And I knew that. I could feel that. And so I didn't worry about the money, the money wasn't my confidence. The job wasn't my confidence. How cool it was and respectable of a job it was. Because as you can imagine, I'm first generation college student. So my parents were so proud of me for going to college, doing well at UT,
Mm.
and then going to New York. And so what did that mean for them, for me to be like, I want to be an entrepreneur now, Thankfully, they supported it. But ultimately my confidence was in God. That was one thing. And another thing is I really wanted to start to sow my roots somewhere. I
Mm.
think that's what was really coming up in me. Like, I know I'm not going to live in New York for forever. I know that I had the opportunity to go to Hong Kong or London, either of those offices, which is what like I said, I had intended to do when I first came into the job. And I was like, but I'm not going to be there long term. And I was young, right? You would think, why would you sow your roots at 24,
Mhm.
But I was there. I wanted to sow my roots somewhere, and I knew it wouldn't be any of these places. And being close to family would help for my bigger goals of having a family and having kids, and start to establish myself somewhere. Even if it wasn't entrepreneurship, I wanted to start being a part of a community, and that was important to me.
Mm. The confidence in, I think people will hear that. I think that sense and that feeling, that whether gut for some people, they feel that sense this is not it. But for people who locate that in God and being able to say, you know what, my confidence are not in these things, but my confidence is that if I'm getting this sense that God will kind of guide me and take care of me ultimately, I think that resonates. I also think this is also something people I think is rare to hear, especially that nice about sowing a seed. There's something to be said about kind of big trees, deep roots, long seeds being sowed over time, right? To look
Yeah.
about the life you want. Was that a sense of, to your point, like was that a sense of like, again, because we live in a time when there's so much transient, it's kind of like career, hop, 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 hop. Was that a cultural thing of just like, we in Texas, man, we settle down at some point, or was it like no, I just had a sense that this was wisdom for what I
Mm.
wanted.
I would say the latter, because
Mm.
I definitely fought it initially in the sense that, I mean, think about it. I'm from Texas City, Texas.
Mhm.
I go to I go to Austin, I go to New York. Like, the idea of coming home was not my jam. I was like trying to go further. I was trying to go more. So I did fight against it a bit. So I don't think it was just a cultural thing. Although most of my family is in one place. It was more of just the wisdom of understanding the season I was in. And I'm so glad I leaned into that, because I mean, look at what was birthed from it. I had no idea we would, launch the league. I had no idea we would, be able to have all these incredible opportunities. But God knew, and He placed that in me, through the Holy Spirit, that quickening in my spirit of, okay, it's time to move. And though this move looks to be not cool compared to where you are, it's going to have some really beautiful fruit. So, yeah, I would attribute it to just wisdom and God's grace.
I love this. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My dad's an entrepreneur, mom's an entrepreneur, and I think now, as you kind of talk about just kicking off the league. Now, I want people to hear this because there's almost there's almost providential in the fact that you and Terry together because you have someone in your husband who is on the skill of training, skill of encouraging, a skill of helping people and coaching people holistically, right? This is clearly goes beyond the physical realm. But then
Yeah.
you are coming in as this systems operator, executor, like I think so often what scares people about business with family, business with husband and wife is one, how does this affect our relationship and boundaries? You know, two, could we honor our roles in this? What did that look like? Because it seemed like you were so bold. You have confidence in God. You hop out there. You come in. Like, how did you think through that? What was that walking for you specifically? Just focusing on you. Like, how did you navigate? Okay, how am I going to do this? Do I want to have this type of relationship with my husband? Do I want to like? How did you navigate that?
Oh, that is a great question. And honestly, I don't think going into it, we were as thoughtful about it, which was, a process. We got there. I think going into it, first off, Terry really is my best friend in the world. Like, he is the person I would choose to do all the things with. And I'll be honest, I think I felt more like that then than I do now. Not that I don't feel like he's my best friend, but when we were in that space, think about it. We're young, we're free, we have all this time, we don't have kids. It was like we could do all the things, right? And now with kids, it's like everything is the capacity has shrunk so much, the margin. So we have to really work more towards saying that, to having that best friend kind of relationship. I think that's important to point out because you hear people say, a couple say they're my best friend. It's like, that looks different in different seasons too. But anyway, we were best friends at the time. So we were just almost like best friends, excited to like do this business together. We were newly married. But what we quickly learned was two things. One, when it comes to a household, and we talked about this on a recent post you did on Instagram, I believe that the man is the head of the household, and we operate in that way. As I expressed, I'm very clear on, what I feel is right to do and what and why, because that's always my thing. Like, I don't just need to be right, but I can tell you why I think this is the best course of action. But ultimately, when it comes to our household, Terry's, the head, and he leads there. But when it comes to our business, it's different, right? We're business partners. So I think that was the first thing to kind of make clear as we begin to kind of feel some of this, right? And, we 50-50 partners? No, because I believe that in business, whether it's your husband or a business partner or a friend or sister or whatever, you should be 51-49, meaning you should identify different areas of the business where he's 51 and I'm 49, I'm 51 and he's 49, so that you don't have all of the friction, right? So that you don't have those bottlenecks. Like, for example, when it comes to our finances, I'm 51 and he's 49, meaning, of course, he can bring to me any issue or, he doesn't agree or we should consider this. But when it comes to the finance things, because that's my lane, I'll be the decision maker when it comes to our businesses, right? And then when it comes to marketing, Terry is brilliant when it comes to like branding and all of that. There are times when there's a shirt for the league, like some of our retail or apparel, and I'm like, that don't look good. And he's like, this is my lane. And I'm like, all right, I don't think it looks good, but okay. So I think that helped create some really healthy boundaries. And so I think those two things, one, identifying that when it came to business, it wasn't just always Terry's decision goes. And then also identifying the different areas in our business. And we would get that question all the time. How are you able to work together so well? And that was it, because Terry had his lane and I had my lane. Like you said, he crushed it in the fitness space. I'm not going to be telling him how to program workouts. That's his 51%, lane. He's not going to be telling me this is how we should do our budgeting, or, he doesn't have those conversations with our accountant and what have you. That's my lane. So we were able to really focus on our lanes and move forward strong and not have all this friction. And he's much better at this than I am. He would have brought this up. And so I'm proud of myself for bringing this up right now. I am much more of the workaholic type, or I should say I was before kids. Kids kind of helped change that a little bit. Yeah. But then he was. So I would bring business into the bedroom. We'd be going to sleep and he's like, I'm a night owl and he's a morning person. So I'm wanting to talk business, and it would bother him, and then it would frustrate me. I'm like, we gotta make these decisions. One thing we did was simply having a Monday morning meeting, where we would, all those things, if it wasn't urgent, we'll talk about it on Monday, as opposed to me, because I want to talk about business and work all the time because I love it. And he's like, we need to have boundaries and space for this. So I think that was another thing that helped keep our marriage stable, while we grew a business.
There's so many jewels, because there's so much jewels in that, and I don't want to spend as much time on it, because I think like there's so much that's come from that, because my head's still racking, right? when I think about the systems, because you say your wife, your mother, but you guys have many businesses, right? I think people should take up the free jewelry, and she gives out a lot, and make sure you go check out free jewelry in terms of just like the systems. I even talk about this from a counseling perspective around, you need to have a check-in. You need to have a space where, you all check in and do that, but also having boundaries. And I think too, there's a lot of fear often, I think, for many women, and also some men, I think, when it comes to the partnering and being in relationship. But I think the way you guys talk about it really shows how you're affirming people in the gifts that God has given them and giving people space, on top of the fact that we're limited. We have limited time. We can't worry about 50,000 things. So this actually gives you freedom, as opposed to feeling you're in a jail of, this person has the say and I don't have to say. So I just want people to make sure they file that away in the notes. But you have a lot of businesses. You have so many things going on, and you're such a systems person. And so you have the league growing. You got the Edo location; it grows. You got that coming, and now you have the consultant 2019. You have all these things. You have the restaurant starting. Flavor Fuel book comes out. Oh, what did your life look like? And then and also you're serving at the church and speaking, and how did God, I think, give you somewhat of a North Star around rest, around yes, no, should we do this? Rhythm and rhythms where did God play into all of these things you're doing and how you actually manage your life?
Yeah. Woo. First, I'll say it looked very different pre and post babies, right? We had so much more energy, so much time and focus, right? When pre babies, I mean, our boys are, we love them so much. They're just like everything, right? They're the center of why we do what we do. But I just try to make it real, right? Because when it comes to launching a business, in that first 1 to 3 years, it is lit. It is so lit. And I don't think, me and Terry were just saying this the other day, I don't think we could have launched the league the way we did, or it had the success it had, with 2 kids and 1 on the way right now. So we're in a different season, right? But when it came to God, so with those Monday morning meetings, we start them in prayer, right? We start them in saying, Lord, we are going to talk about all the things as it relates to all these businesses. We do this still. And now it's not just the league. It's like 8 businesses, right? It's ridiculous. But we say, God, we're going to make these plans, but we want you to direct them. Like, we want them to be your plans, right? Because we can make all the plans we want, but if your hand isn't in it and on it, if you're not going to grace us to do it, it's going to be a lot of wasted resources. So we start there, right? And we basically just give it to God, and we are very open to those same heart checks. And I mean, just as a quick example, there was one building we were looking to get for our first location as we were transitioning, and I can't explain it, but there was, just like in New York, when I had that sense that this season was ending, I had a sense that this building, though it looked perfect, was not the building we were supposed to be in. And I couldn't pinpoint it. And so the guy was trying to rush us, right? And I was just kind of taking my time looking at the the lease agreement and all this. And then we had a flood here in Houston. And we realized that there were so many issues with the roof, and it was just pouring through the building. We went into the building. There was water all over the floor. The guy didn't, disclose that, and we would have found out later. And so God will guide you, and if you listen to Him, He's talking. I think, like you said, a lot of times that nudging or that intuition people feel, it's really the Holy Spirit. So it's pausing and saying, okay, Like, is this God speaking? What do I need to assess? Where am I? Let me have a heart check. Am I pushing this through because I want to do it, or has God graced me to do it? Is it a
Mm,
passionate moment where I'm excited? There's a difference between passion and purpose. Or am I
mm,
purpose to do it? Is it bigger than me? Right? And
mm,
so asking yourself those questions, I think, are key.
mm. I think you've made a. I want to let that breathe a little bit because you've at these critical junctures you've made a space to ask good questions. That those
Yeah.
questions that you asked in New York and those questions that you were asking on Monday mornings. I think it makes it practical and real for people to say, number one, there's a faith component to actually believe that something comes out of asking God for help in what you're about to do now and what you're planning to do. And I think whether you are married or not, I think that is something instructive for all of us to hear around how it that guides you. But I want to go even more under the surface because I think one of the things that people struggle with, I think, when they think about work, they think about entrepreneurship, or they think about and they're running a P&L at a company, whatever it is. It's just like, what does this actually ever hit the product? Right? Does my faith actually hit the product? And I think one of the things that I even noticed, been to the location. I always tell people that God also informs how you work and how you think of policies, how you think of benefits, how you think of that. What did that look like? Because I know you're different, especially we'll get into the consulting practice, but how you thought holistically about the business, the league, and you're like, you know what? Well, benefits is 20%, we should do 30%. Or you know what? We need to take time off, or we need to do, like, how did you think about policies? Were there certain things you thought about, like, we're going to do this a God way, it's going to be radical?
Yes, yes, we did. And it really for the league was us pausing. And I have to remind entrepreneurs of this so much because I can't tell you how many times I get a text. I'm starting a business. I'm going to do an Instagram. I'm going to start off with an Instagram page, or here's my logo, or here's my website. There's so much focus on the marketing aspects of things. But what happens when you bring into people into your business and there's no systems, there's no strong foundation, the money doesn't make sense, right? So you have to think about your business holistically. Okay. So one thing I teach in my program on developing a business plan is core values. So starting there, what are your core values? And
Mm,
Terry actually speaks to this so well. He does his demonstration where he's holding like 3 lemons in his hand and he's trying to reach for another one, but if you reach for another one, you'll drop it. What are those 3 to, let's say, 4 core values that you would not drop if you were trying to reach something else, right? So you
mm,
kind of live or die by these core values. If an opportunity came your way, but it was against these core values, you would say no to it. So we started there with the league and we had 3. And they were all rooted in the people we were serving and what we were trying to create from a gym experience. One was getting 1% better every day.
mhm,
So we did not like the message in the fitness community of go, 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 right? Having these, crazy diets and fad diets. We wanted it to be a lifestyle. So what would it look like if you just got 1% better every day? Another one was community. So
mhm,
we wanted it to be more than just a gym, a place where people literally felt like they were at home, they were comfortable, and that went down into the toilet paper we use. I recently had a client tell me, "Y'all use the kind of toilet paper I use at my house," because most businesses will just get the cheap toilet paper trying to cut costs. We use good toilet paper. We want people to feel at home. When it comes to community, we train our team to call people by name.
mhm,
Hey Joe, thanks so much for coming today. Hope you have a great workout. I love your shirt. We literally train them to look at what they're wearing, look at what they're doing. If they mention their kid was having a birthday party, the next time they come, ask them how the party went, right?
mhm,
We want it to feel like a community. And then number 3 was keep moving. And that kind
mhm.
of seemed to go against the first one I said, right? Because it's like the hustle
Yep.
grind. But the idea is just really keep moving forward, right?
Mhm,
So in our workouts, we say in workout and in life, keep moving. In our workouts, we have rest periods. It's actually very integral to our proprietary pack training format is these rest periods. But the idea is that you keep moving through the work whenever you are moving. So
mhm,
those were our 3 core values, and we, had them, you know, implemented into so many different realms of our business. And I think that had so much to do about how we thought about our business holistically, and how our business took off much quicker than we thought it would. One last thing I'll say is around our team. You heard me call them team earlier. We don't refer to them as staff or employees. We don't want them to feel like they're staff or employees. We want them to feel like they're part of a team. They are just as important as we are, because we can't do what we do without them. Literally, the gym is a well-oiled machine at this point, and we couldn't keep it going if it weren't for them. So we want them to feel included. We ask them for feedback all the time. When it goes back to me and Terry disagreeing on the retail and apparel, we'll send a group text. Hey, which one do y'all like more?
They don't even know. They don't even know the background around that. I'm just curious. Just curious.
Yeah.
A little quality.
Yeah, we won't tell y'all who likes which one, but yeah. So we make them as involved as we can, and then they begin to treat the business like it's theirs, right? As opposed to just someone coming in to do tasks and that sort of thing. So those are some examples of what we've done.
And I know that this is ending because I think now even transitioning a bit, it's hard to even think about transition because you have so many businesses. And I think this is why this is going to be helpful for people, because I know so many people in this position, and that they have been graced to take on responsibilities to serve people in different verticals, different industries. They're creating products that help people, that make people's lives easier, better. But there's a natural question around capacity. And I think that, where there are some people who are just like, how do you know? Now, the answer may be that, I listen to God, and that's not a light thing. But there's some people who just practically say, okay, how do you know that this is too much? Or how do you know that, we should do more, right? Especially because you're managing some business, and now you have Burr Williams, that you're taking on, and you've covered 60 book clients, probably about 100 now plus at this stage of how many clients you've touched. But how do you for yourself? Because I know for so many people who are mothers, so many of my sisters are mothers, the struggle they have, especially when it comes to faith, is just like, time to myself. I need time to myself. I don't have time to myself. So how do you know capacity? How do you keep yourself honest and accountable to say, am I doing too much? Or, you know what? We've been given a lot. I think we should be doing more and taking advantage of this opportunity here.
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually did a episode on my podcast. It's called Bird Means Business for moms, around freedom, flexibility, and fulfillment, trying to manage it all. And I did another episode on how I don't do it all. So I think in that context, it's important to state that, Terry and I, we have incredible help from our family that helps with the boys. And, people say, how do you do it all? Well, it's like, I don't, right? I have systems. I have a tribe, a community that helps. But when it comes to capacity, I'll be honest, Terry is much better at this than I am. I see a gap and I'm like, we can do more. We can we can fill it in. You know what I mean? Like, let's do more. Whereas he's like, no, let's reserve that gap, that 1 hour block of time that you have on Friday, for you to just not have anything planned and to rest. That is something that I'm honestly working on. Terry has come so far in that, and I am not the best. So I don't know how great I can speak to it. But I will say that when it comes to knowing that you're doing too much, I mean, look around. I'll be very vulnerable and share this. My son the other day, he was like, "Oh, Mom, I had left my phone on the side of the table," and he brings it over to me. And, "Mommy, here's your phone. Here's your phone, Mommy," like as if I needed it to be on my person at all times, because probably I'm walking around with it all the time. He sees me on it. And it's tough because we have classes going on in the evenings at the gym, and there are emergencies, especially when there's a winter storm that comes through. And there are things that have to happen. So I have to have my phone, but I don't want my kids to associate that with me, right? And so if you listen, you'll hear. Also listen, checking in with your body, right? Your water intake, your sleep, your skin will tell you, right? Whether you're doing too much. I have a freebie on my website. It's called Self-Care is in the Everyday. We like to try to make self-care, getting a massage and going golfing and going on this trip, but
Sunday.
it's in the everyday things. It's in getting enough water and making sure you eat lunch and taking care of yourself. So your body will speak to you when you've hit that wall.
Your body will speak to you, but your life will speak to you. Your family will speak to you. Your children may speak to you. And hearing that and heeding that humbly, as
Yes.
God's gentle nudge of there's an opportunity here. I think it's something
Yeah.
for people to hear. I very much, I think, especially in lieu of that, very honoring of your time. I think for people, given the nature of time and thing that so much that you manage and how you care for people, um, I'm curious about just how do you connect most with God? What's your rhythm with God for you personally? Some people like when I drive or use the evening, or what does that look like for you, given how much you're giving out to people, to your husband, to your children, to your clients, to your team? What fills you up? What does that look like practically?
Yes. It's every morning around 6:30 a.m. I literally have it in my calendar because I'm one for systems. I live by my calendar. It's
Hmm.
how I remember things. Is Jesus time,
Mm.
and it's marked and it's there. Um, I would say I do it about 95, 96% of the time. It's that important to me. And there was a season where it wasn't, and it was actually a season where I had a young boy, a young kid at home, and then one that was very new, a newborn. I was breastfeeding, and it was just so hard to have that time in the morning because you're just exhausted. And I could see the bad fruit, the toxic fruit of it in my life. And so after that season, I committed to it. That was 2 years ago, and so here I am, committed to doing the Jesus time. So what it looks like is, first I have a confession that I say, and I've
Mm.
said a confession since junior high. So kind of taking it back full circle, I
Wow.
wrote out a confession. It's still in my journal that I have from junior high. It looks a lot different today than it did then. That it was talking about my boyfriend, and making these confessions. But it's interesting because I was literally confessing over Terry, my future husband, and so it's in different areas of my life, my health, my faith, my marriage, my children, all the different areas. I make confessions around those. So I start with that, and then I dive into typically a Bible study. Right now, I'm doing Priscilla Shiver's Gideon Bible study.
Mm.
It's from 2013. It's amazing. What's wild about this, and going back to God speaking to you, I started this Bible study with two other friends about a year and a half ago. Every single one is wildly timely, right? To where it blows my mind the things that I'm reading. It's exactly what I'm going through in this season of my life. And God can do that because his word is, vital. It's living. It's sharper than any, two-edged sword. We hear that, right?
Blood and
So
bone and
it's
marrow. Yep.
it jumps off the page at you. So I'm going through that one now, and we continue. We've gone through probably 7 or 8 different Bible studies, and there are times where maybe we'll skip a week. And when it goes to that, I typically go to Proverbs. And I know this is kind of simple, but I go to Proverbs, and whatever day of the month it is, since there are 31 chapters in Proverbs, right? 31,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Yes.
You can go and just say, okay, it's the 24th. I'm going to go to Proverbs 24 and read it and pull things from it. So that's how my quiet time, my Jesus time looks. And I'm telling you, I can skip a day or two, but if I skip too many days, I start to get short with my husband. I start to feel anxiety. I've dealt with postpartum anxiety, and there have been
Mm.
effects of it over the years. I feel all that coming back, and I'm like, I need to go back to the source. I need to go back to who I am, my first love, and that's having that precious, precious time in the morning with God.
Mm. 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 This theme, especially this theme about your life talking to you, and responding from what you from where you are, I think is going to be helpful for so many people. So many people in hearing this. Um, I could roll with you for 2 hours on this joint, man. But I want to, of your calendar. There
I'll
is.
just say, I'll say this,
Mm.
for those listening, if you find that you're in that place and you don't know and you have all these questions and you're wondering, just ask yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? Is it
Mm.
for some goal that I had years ago? Is it something I'm trying to prove to myself, to my family, or to my ex-boyfriend? Why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you putting
Mm.
these pressures on yourself? If you can kind of get to the root of why, it can help answer a lot of the questions that you have, right? In a good way and in a bad. It could be like eye-opening for you, or it can be motivating for you. But
Mm.
I think really starting with why is key.
I think this is partly why, even getting to this other point, I think this is partly why I think you're exceptional at what you're doing with Bird Williams Consulting, because I don't call this housekeeping work, but I do think that there are scary questions, I'd call them.
Yes.
It's easy, is like, like there's activity and then there's real progress. There's two different things. And to
Right.
your point, when you talked about I started a business, look, I have my Instagram, I have my this. There's all this like, look. Oh my gosh, I just finished this job. I need to find a new offer. Okay, I want to go. But there's so much like next. And it seems like there has been a clarity, a moment that you've had all throughout your experience, which you bring to your work today and you bring to your clients, the wealth of experience. But there's also the willingness to ask those scary questions of like, why? Why? No. Why are you doing this? Um, for you, do you see that as almost like just the secret sauce of there's Jesus as the center. Like, why do I even love God? Like, why is it good news to me? But then there's also with everything I'm doing, why should I be doing? Do you feel that that's kind of the distinguishing factor of just kind of like the work that you do now, at least the focus? Is it that, you know what, it's my why? I'm able to get to the why, and I'm able to bring experience of what happens when you don't and why it is. Do you see the why as your distinguishing factor?
I actually do, now that you frame it that way. I mean, I talk a lot about holistic business practices,
Mm,
meaning not just focusing on one pillar of your business, but thinking about the whole thing, thinking about yourself, because the health of your own personal self is going to affect your business. So, yeah, I think I get to the why. You're building this empire, you're building this legacy. I hear entrepreneurs say that a lot. I want to build this legacy and empire, but why? Is it for your children? Is it for the people you're going to serve? Well, if that's the case, then you can calm down a little bit. You can come back, you can
mm,
let the pressure off, because how do you serve people well? That's really the question you should be asking, not how should I build an empire? How do I serve the people in my sphere well right now, right? So
mm,
I would say absolutely. I think why is so central to not only how I live my life, but how I work in my businesses. I was actually on an online conference for Boss Babes ATX, and
mhm.
I was going through my business plan process, like explaining to them all these things. And one girl said in the comments, she was like, a lot of what you're sharing are like life principles. Like it's like you're talking about business principles, but I could apply that to my life too. And it's, yeah, exactly, right? Because it's that holistic business approach.
Mm. This. I think this is the perfect transition. And as we close, is the question. There are many brothers and sisters, whether they're starting a business, whether they've been senior executive in a company for some time, they're working, but what's not working for them is just this conception of God,
Mm-hmm.
and like, why should I even, like, I keep hearing about it, you keep talking about it, but they're curious, but they're just unsure about where to start first. What would you say to someone who is, again, sees they're like, all right, I have business, I love my business, I love this, but also my life, where do I even start? What would you say to someone who's in that place with God where they're still curious, and they're still trying to figure out how it fits in with their work and their life? What would you say to them?
I would say this. There was this quote, and I'm really hoping I don't butcher it. And I think it says, you don't have a body. No, wait. Oh, I'm going to mess it up.
It's all
I don't
good.
know. What I'm trying to say is we are soul beings, right?
Mm,
We are soul beings, and when we kind of miss that part, we miss the spiritual part of ourselves, right? Focusing
mm,
on the physical, maybe with our runs, and our financial aspects of ourselves, and all these other things. But we are very much so souls, and
mm,
so the reason that it's important to try God is because he created you, right?
mm,
And so going back to the creator to understand what he wants the created to do, what you were created and purposed to do, is huge, right? Because if I was designed to be a business strategist, but I'm over here trying to be a investment banking analyst, there's going to be so much friction. There's going to be so much unfulfillment. There's going to be so much, disheartenment, and just like, lack of motivation, or all of that. I'm
mm,
not going to feel, no matter how many deals I do or how much money I make, that I felt successful or
mm,
happy in life. And so it's really going back to the creator to say, what am I here to do? I think is key. And I think one practical thing someone could do is just try it out. Just like you try out a fitness regimen, or whatever, a job, maybe even if I'm going to give this a year, give God a year and say, for
mm,
the next year, I'm going to do something simple. Maybe it's joining a church, maybe it's even a church online. Maybe if you're already doing that, it's, being involved, saying, okay, I'm going to volunteer. I'm going to serve in some capacity at a church, doing something to grow in God. Maybe it's having that 30-minute Jesus time, like I do on my calendar, where you say, okay, I'm going to give this time to God and let him speak to me and listen more than you talk. And, instead of just asking for things, asking God what you want, how he wants you to bless someone today, taking those different angles with it, I think is something to just try for a year and see if your life has changed, see if you have more of that fulfillment and happiness and peace.
Mm. How could what do you have coming up? Because clearly you have something coming up. You have a nice little course, because clearly not everybody can claim your time. They cannot afford you. Let me not put that out in this. I'm gonna let you leave that for your one-on-ones. But how could people support you? What do you have coming up in this next season, beyond a beautiful blessing on the way in this third trimester? But what do you have coming? How could people support, or kind of just really rally around learning more from you and the work that you're doing, or receive some of your services?
Yes. So with Bird Williams, it's my strategy firm. There are a few ways to work with me. I do have strategy sessions that I currently offer. Prove It Plan is my signature business plan development course. So this is where for 5 weeks we work through those pillars: foundation, financial, operations, and marketing. And you end with the strategic business plan where you can now go out and have confidence as you grow your brand or launch your brand. And so enrollment for is actually closed right now, but I'm planning to reopen it soon. So you could stay tuned for that. And if you just want more tips on how to launch and grow a business, it's Bird Means Business podcast. That's where I think today was episode 64. And so 64 different episodes that range from how to finance your business to how to plan a photo shoot to the beautiful dance of entrepreneurship, where you have to understand there's not always this perfect balance. Sometimes it's just a rhythm you have to get into. And again, lots of holistic business practices there. So that's what I would share.
Oh, that's awesome. How do they find you? How do they find you online? What's going on?
Yes, on all on all the socials, I'm at Hey Bird Williams. So that's HEY Bird Williams.
Ashley, I think on behalf of those who hear and will see this, I just want to thank you. I thank you for being our sister. I thank you for being so vulnerable and open, with your journey. And I know that we will have you back as a team on here, but I think on behalf of them, I also want to just say blessings to you, blessings to your family. Shout out to T3, shout out to Trent, and shout out to the little one on the way, and my brother
Yes.
Terry, for the blessing that you have. You've not only given the world so much guidance, and you've given people hope, you've given people a new way to view their whole holistic wellness. You're giving people, young people, who will carry on, I think, this tradition of service and care for others. And so I thank you. I thank you for being such a light to the world. Thank you, sister.
Thank you, Lawrence. And I want to thank you for what you're doing. I know this isn't easy. I have a podcast. It's a labor of love to get all the things together and to stick with it, despite, what your audience is saying back and all of that. So thank you for creating this space. Thank you for being diligent and committed to it. It is blessing so many people.
Oh, thank you, my sister. God bless. Thank God.
God bless.